Focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Well, happy Tuesday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on the Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, and today, we got a great conversation in store for you, but before we get there, got to go ahead and give a shout out to today's sponsor. That is the Expat Money Summit 2022. Head to briannicholsshow.com/expat, where you can grab your free tickets to this virtual summit taking place November 7th through November 11th, 5 days. 30 expert speakers join Mikkel Thorup, founder of the Expat Money podcast and host of this year's Expat Money Summit, for a week. And I promise you will reap the benefits for generations. Head to briannicholsshow.com/expat and grab your tickets today. Folks, I am so excited for today's episode because we always talk about bridging the world of business and politics and how there is, in fact, a great opportunity and avenue to find success. And today we're going to be talking to a guest who has not only found some success, but has found success with some icons, to say the least. Join the program, Chris Widener. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chris. Looking forward to the conversation today because, number one, obviously, you've been living this world of living both a business life and a sales and influence life, but also you have a political life, and we have a great audience here who asks time and again how to bridge that world. But before we get there, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the Brian Nichols Show audience and really quickly talk about some of these icons you've had the chance to know and work with. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, among some others. With that being said, Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I've been a speaker since 1988. I've written my 23rd book comes out in October, and I've had some success with that, millions of copies in 14 languages. I have one New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling book called The Angel Inside. But the book that's taken me all over the world for the last 12 or 13 years has been a book called The Art of Influence. I've given my last 1,000 speeches on a book called The Art of Influence, and it's how to persuade others, and persuading others begins with you. And so that's what I train people on, is how to influence other people based on who you are, not just what you do, not just what you say, but based on who you are. And you're right, I did have some opportunities to work with some legends in the early 2000s. I worked with John Maxwell, did some writing for John Maxwell, then ended up working with Jim Rohn for the last 7 years of his life and co-wrote his last book called The 12 Pillars. And then I had a television show with Zig Ziglar in Dallas called True Performance. You can still see that on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you can see Google Zig Ziglar, Chris Widener, True Performance. You'll see, 8 or 10 of the past episodes that we did. People say, how long ago did you do that show? And I tell them about 40 pounds ago. That's how long ago it was. So it's a younger, better looking Chris Widener in that. But no, we had great time. And then politically, I got involved in politics in 2004 when my best friend ran for governor of the state of Washington, lost the closest election in U.S. history, governor's election in U.S. history, 129 votes out of 3 million cast. I was a primary candidate for the U.S. Senate in 2010. And ended up doing drive time radio in Seattle, and now I'm the president of the American Freedom Tour. We go across the country bringing President Trump and what we call the conservative dream team to cities all around the country, talking about conservative political values. So I've had a dual track for many years of being in business and speaking and writing books, but also being engaged politically, and it's been great.
And let's talk about that political, the bridging of the political and business world, right? And I asked that question because I know I spoke at a business summit up in Wisconsin back in February, and at the end of the conversation, it was actually I was focused on business technology, which is my day job. And a gentleman came up, and in the Q&A, he asked a question out of left field, and he goes, well, Brian, I know you're overtly political. Your podcast is an overtly political podcast, but you also bridge the world by talking sales, marketing, strategy, talking to entrepreneurs, business owners. So what do you find in terms of any schism where you have your political ideas and they lead to friction? Or do you find it to be the alternative where you actually find people embrace you for who you are? And I thought when you were talking about the ideas of influence, and you mentioned how it's based on who you are, that's profound. So I would love if you could, Chris, maybe exemplify a little bit more in terms of, or not exemplify, should be expound a little bit more there. That is in terms of what you're finding, how influence based on who you are does lead to success. And then I guess the question that I got asked: have you ever seen where it leads to some friction in the business world as well?
Oh, absolutely. Far more friction than the good stuff. I get canceled all the time. I've lost a number of speaking engagements just in the last few months because what happens is they call me up, and I'm a member of the Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame. I'm a best-selling author. I've worked, I have a high profile in the personal development world. People call up and go, "Oh, you're in. We love you. It's great. Yeah, our event is this date. We want to hire you. You're fantastic. I read your book. You're great. I've seen your videos. It's amazing. Perfect. Great. Put it on your calendar." Okay, perfect. 3 days later, well, I took it to my board, and one of the board members, they looked you up, and they think your politics stuff is a little, they just aren't comfortable with it. So, so you're out. So I've lost a lot of money because of my political involvement. But, I always say I'm glad the founding fathers didn't worry about the money they were going to lose if they took a position. So, and I've had some very famous speakers who shall remain nameless, but they just say, "Oh man, I'm not willing to say what I believe." And frankly, they're cowards. We need more people to speak truthfully on both sides. We call our tour the American Freedom Tour, right? People ought to be able to be free to speak their mind. We ought to encourage discussion, the free flow of information, the exchange of ideas. I want to hear from rational liberals. I want to hear from rational conservatives. I want to hear from rational libertarians, and we ought to let the best ideas win. Unfortunately, we are so polarized in America today that if you disagree with me, I'm going to try and get you canceled. If you disagree with me, I'm going to try and ruin your business. Not me. I'm saying that's what happens. I would never do that. I don't care what your political persuasion is. Good for you. If you want to discuss it, I'll discuss it with you. I'll make my case. You make your case. In fact, sometimes what I like to do, Brian, I like to do it because it's fun when it works. And I also like to do it because it proves a point when it doesn't work. I will often say to somebody who I'm disagreeing with or talking to, I'll say, "Hey, let's do something fun." And they'll say, "What's that?" And I'll say, "Let's switch roles. I'll make the liberal argument. You make the conservative argument." And when we do it, it's actually fun because you realize that the other person has listened, they understand it, they can articulate it. It makes me think, what are they thinking to make this argument? And it makes my mind crisper. What usually happens is they go, "Oh, I can't really do that," because they haven't ever actually considered the other opinion. So they can't make the conservative argument. I can make a liberal argument. You give me a topic, I can make a liberal argument because I know what they think. I know where they draw their conclusions from. I know what the rationale is. I disagree with it, but I've listened and I've considered it. And that's the way America used to be. People would consider and listen. They'd come to different conclusions, but they would consider and they'd listen and they'd debate. And it wasn't about doxing and, all these kinds of things that's happening now. I just heard a friend of mine today told me about something that happened near them, a Second Amendment group. Somebody came to them and went to their offices and went to his house, his office, and broke the window and threw a Molotov cocktail in there and burned it to the ground. Come on. We don't need to do that kind of stuff. We need to discuss. We need to vote. We need to get people out there and in the marketplace of ideas and have these discussions so we can move forward. Unfortunately, we're just not there as a country anymore, I don't believe.
Yeah, I remember thinking back to some sales legends myself that I've listened to and gotten to know over the years. I remember first I was watching a video on YouTube and I saw Jeffrey Gitomer wearing an "Enjoy Capitalism" shirt. And I thought, okay, I like that. And then I
know Jeffrey, he's a funny dude.
Well, and then I listened to his podcast, right? Sell or Die. And all of a sudden I'm hearing him talk about some of his favorite books. And one of his favorite books is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I'm like, get out of here. And it hit me like, hey, he's kind of probably on our team, if you will. And then I, listened to Victor Antonio, and he's, good friend and mentor.
Oh, I love Victor. Victor's amazing.
Amazing guy.
I think he's the best Latinos. He's one of the best speakers in America today. He's the best Latino speaker in America today. Just fantastic. Yes.
Oh, Victor's incredible. I'm huge fan of Victor.
Brian Tracy. I don't know if you've had Brian Tracy on
Not
the
yet.
show, but
No, he's on the list.
Tracy would be a good guy to have on the show because he's always been very upfront with his political ideas. Now, the other thing that you'll find with a lot of folks is they'll be conservative fiscally, but they'll be socially more libertarian or liberal in that regard. But fiscally, most of these business speakers are going to be conservative fiscally because, frankly, liberal policies, monetary policies, get you what we're living through right now.
Oh my God. No kidding. I know I just sat down with a business owner today, literally. And this is the benefit I love about being still in the world of sales and living it every single day is I get to hear what's happening. His prices have gone up 35% across the board. And he's like, I don't know what to do because I can't, like, my fixed costs. I mean, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. And you feel the pain. You feel because there's still the problems they have to have that are solved, but they just can't do it. They can't find the cash. And I guess we need more people right now, right, to actually stand up and be their authentic selves and to say, like, this isn't right. But
do it in a way that is winsome.
Yes.
Here's one of the phrases that I coined, and I love it, because I think it makes a lot of good points. And that is, in order to win some, you must be winsome. And I really believe that. You can't be a jerk. You know, sometimes the Bible says to speak the truth in love. And I think that's a great merger, right? You want to speak the truth, but you want to do it in love. Some people, they won't speak the truth. Oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to, everybody can do whatever they want to do. I'm not going to say something's wrong. And they just love everybody. Well, society and people don't move forward if you just do that. But then there's other people who they just speak the truth and they don't demonstrate any love. And people say, I'm just a truth teller. And I'm like, no, you're kind of a jerk. Speaking the truth in love means considering the other person's interests and doing it out of helping the other person. But sometimes you need to say something that they're not necessarily going to like. And, there's an old biblical proverb that says wounds from a friend can be trusted. I want people to know that even though it might hurt, you can trust me that I'm saying it because I believe that it's the right thing and it'll help you out. We need to be winsome. The old Ronald Reagan, happy warrior kind of thing. And I just, I think that we would do far better if we could do that.
Amen. I can't agree more. And frankly, that's why I've been trying to encourage business owners to stand up, to not necessarily fight back, but just to speak your values and don't be afraid of, to your point, the cancel culture. It's going to be there no matter what. And it's when we say, nah, when we cancel the cancel culture, that's when we actually can reclaim the control. And what I wanted to do as we move forward to the next part of the conversation is to kind of focus on taking control of what's going to happen here going forward. We have a recession down the road, and it seems that a lot of business owners have a decision to make in terms of how they're going to approach this from a leadership standpoint. Now, before we get there, though, I do have to give a special shout out, a live on-air shout out to today's sponsor, and that is Ebles. Ebles is a phenomenal sponsor. They do CBD products, but they also do CBD roll. And I've been living on the Ebles CBD freeze gel the past few days. I helped a friend whose parents, they were hit by a tornado, and we cut down about 15 or so trees. And in my helping with the cutting the trees and throwing logs, I twisted just the wrong way. It happens, Chris, and pulled my back. Well, this has been saving my back. I'm going to tell you, this has been my lifesaver. And folks, if you want to go ahead and get your Ebles freeze gel, well, go to briannicholsshow.com/Ebles. You can grab that. Plus, you'll get it for 50, not 50. My goodness, they'll kill me if I do that. 15% off. There we go. So one more time, briannicholsshow.com/Ebles. Now, Chris, let's talk about this looming recession. I've heard from business owners, and I'm having this conversation, daily with leaders in their industries, that it's getting tough. They're seeing the inflation it's hitting right now, and we're seeing it's only going to get worse. And now there's the looming recession where you're starting to see companies are scaling back in terms of planning their projects long term, and also they're starting to tighten the belt. The budgets are being restrained. And they're looking to either A, use their existing cash flow more effectively, or B, cut costs. So there's a lot of decisions that a lot of leaders have to make right now. And there's going to be a lot of turmoil that's going to be happening over the next few months to a couple of years. So you've been through this. You've seen the recessions in the past, and I'm sure you've coached business leaders in the past as well. What's some sound advice for business professionals and leaders as they're going through this tumultuous time, especially over the next few years with economic uncertainty? And I'm sure it's going to be inflationary and based on the recession as well.
Well, you're about to learn some character. You're about to learn some perseverance.
Yeah.
About to learn some tenacity. You're going to have an opportunity to be an optimist in the face of some realistic negative situations. You know, I was just thinking today about somebody who lives 20 miles from work, and their car gets 20 miles to the gallon, and they work 5 days a week. So they're spending 2 gallons a day. So there's 10 gallons a week. And, gas at $5 instead of $2. They used to spend $20 a week. Now they're spending, or at $2 at 10 gallons would be $20 a week. Now they're going to spend 5 times 20 gallons or 10 gallons, $50 a week. So it's an extra $30 a week times 4 weeks. It's an extra $120 a month. And $120 a month, if you're, a lower income, $3,000 a month, that's a significant tax. Now, yep. Joe Biden says, anybody under $400,000 won't pay any extra, but they are going to pay extra. They're paying extra already at the gas pump. And of course, most things get trucked around, which means that trucking things around, those big trucks at $5, $6, $7 in some states now, they have to pass that along to the consumer, because it costs more to move that truckload full of stuff. And there's tens of thousands, maybe millions of hundreds of thousands, millions of trucks out on the roads. Prices are going up. Everything is going up, and it particularly hurts the people who are lower income. If you're making $1 million a year or more, it's not going to bother you as much. Or even, $250,000 a year. Although in some major metropolises now, major cities, where houses are $1 million plus, even $250,000, if you got some kids going to college and, those kinds of things, it's going to be tough. And I just think we're just going to have to, well, first of all, vote right. Vote people who are going to make a difference in this. Vote for people who are going to create energy independence. Vote for people who are going to be able to figure out the supply chain issues. Vote for people who are going to have positive economic policy. But, we're looking at, 9 months before the Republicans take the House and Senate back. And even then, they're still going to have a gentleman in the White House who loves to just make executive orders and kill businesses and those kinds of things. So we're looking at 2 more years before we have a chance to be able to replace him. So we've got a slog ahead of us, and it's really unfortunate. And I don't know what we're going to be able to do other than just put up with it, make our voices heard. I would suggest people get a plan B. There's tons and tons of side little businesses that people can do in the evenings, on the weekends, those kinds of things, whether it's a network marketing business, or, you're taking some of your hobbies and maybe you make hats and shirts, or you do woodworking, or, all those kinds of things. I would have a plan B to generate some extra income, maybe buying and selling things on eBay. I heard about a guy, it was kind of interesting, a pastor who I don't think he ever made more than about $60,000 a year, but he loved high-end watches. Well, when he retired, his sons, I think they gave him $10,000. They each kicked in $5,000 to start his watch trading business. Well, now the guy makes like $200,000 a year trading high-end watches. He makes like 3 times more in retirement than he ever did as a pastor, because he taught himself to know everything about high-end watches, and now he buys and sells them and trades them. But it's going to be tough for the next few years. I don't think there's any way that you can sugarcoat that.
All right. And I know we're hard pressed for time, but I do have to ask this final question, because yes, you are a part of the American Freedom Tour, and you're going across the United States with President Donald Trump. You're talking to thousands, millions of Americans about the issues, as we talk about here in the show, that they care about. So number one, what would you say are the top issues, and maybe like the top 3 issues right now you're hearing from people? And number 2, the question that's on everybody's mind, Chris, Trump 2024, is it happening?
I knew that was going to be the question. I'll start with that one. I don't know. He hasn't informed me of his decisions yet, but I'll probably find out about it at the same time you do. I would love for him to. I mean, people get so wrapped up in his personality, and I find him to be gregarious and fun and lighthearted and funny. One of my favorite pictures with me and President Trump is him. I'm laughing, and I can't remember what he was saying, but he's a funny guy. He's got an amazing grasp of facts and figures, and he doesn't use notes during his speech. A brilliant speaker. But no, I don't have any idea. When I hear the things that people are concerned about, they're concerned about money. It's always pocketbook issues. The one thing that Bill Clinton said that was really true was it's the economy, stupid. And that's how he beat George Bush Sr. And so it's important for us to understand people vote their pocketbooks. I think public safety. I think people, they read the stories on the internet or they watch television and they see crime and these woke, weak DAs who are letting people out. I think people are very interested in that kind of thing. I think people have to be concerned about the looming showdown with Russia and the fact that that Putin is even using the words nuclear war. He threatened to destroy Europe yesterday at an event. And we just continue to engage ourselves in Ukraine. I think people are interested in that. Nobody wants to get nuked over what's happening in Ukraine. And so, it comes down to money and safety for most people. Nobody's sitting around, when they do these polls, nobody says, I'm very concerned about what happened on January 6th. Nobody cares. We saw it on television. It was not nearly an insurrection. It wasn't even close to an who goes to an insurrection with no weapons,
and antlers.
Yeah, and antlers and fur coats and snap selfies while they're walking in between the red velvet ropes. No, and by the way, the police who opened the doors and allowed people to walk in, they're not concerned with that. There were some bad things that happened, and if somebody broke the law, the established law, they ought to be punished according to that law. But nobody's sitting around going, oh, let's figure all that stuff out, because they don't believe it. It wasn't an insurrection. You don't have a non-weaponized insurrection.
All right, Chris, we are now officially hard-pressed for time. So with that being said, I want to give folks a chance to continue the conversation. So where can they go ahead and find you online if they want to reach out?
Yeah, if they're interested in the American Freedom Tour, they should absolutely go to AmericanFreedomTour.com. We're coming to a city near most of the folks who are listening to this at some point in the future, AmericanFreedomTour.com. If they want to follow me, I'm on Truth Social, Chris Widener, at Chris Widener. I'm also on Twitter, at Chris Widener. I'm on Facebook, at Chris Widener Speaker, and would love to connect with folks.
Perfect. All right, folks. So how about this? We'll make it easy for you. If you're the audio listener, all you got to do, click the artwork in your podcast catcher. It'll bring you right to BrianNicholsShow.com, where you can find, today's episode plus the entire transcript, but also all of Chris's social media links. And if you're our YouTube watcher, well, please do me a favor. Number one, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little bell notification so you're not missing a single episode. And then number two, we'll include all those links for you right below. And also, by the way, did you check out our episode from yesterday? I went ahead, I gave you 5 tips you could go ahead and still crush your sales quota, even if we're facing a recession. Pretty topical conversation based on what we talked about today with Chris. And folks, thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Brian Nichols Show. If you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead and give it a share. And when you do, give Chris a tag. And when you do, also, please give yours truly a tag as well at B Nichols Liberty. But with that being said, folks, thank you for joining us on today's episode. It's Brian Nichols signing off for Chris Widener. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.